So the first thing we're going to talk about is the story and characters, okay? So any story, if you think about it, it's about, you know, a person. It can be an animal, alien, whatever. But the key is they want something. They desperately want something, okay? So I want you to think in your heads whatever character it might be. Boy, girl, alien, ladybug. And then think about what do they want. I read Garfield comic books. I went to my sister's dorm room. She was staying at a private school one day, and her roommate had this Garfield comic book, and I had never seen comics before, and I was reading it. I was very entertained by them, and then the next summer, I was bored in my father's office one day, and I thought, oh, I'd like to try something like that. And I, instead of a cat, I drew a dog, and I, you know, had the dog just doing interesting things, and I just fell in love with it, and just been cartooning ever since. What's your name?
Olivia.
Olivia. Okay, what's your character?
My character is Alice the unicorn.
Oh, awesome.
And she wants to unite horses with unicorns,
Oh,
but
okay.
a magical border gets in her way.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. Great idea. Okay. Yes, what's your name?
Ella.
Ella. Okay, and what's your character?
So my character is a girl named Scarlett, and her goal is to get revenge on a mean girl named Michaela for kind of being mean to her.
Oh.
And her obstacles are that her kind of enemy has a lot of friends, and she's struggling with dyslexia, and her parents are kind of abusive.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, so
Good storyboard.
yeah, so I mean, a lot of graphic novels, especially these days, can be about serious topics. So that's really cool. Pretty early on, I got very interested in the comic strip Peanuts, and what I liked is how there seemed to be this message on each strip, or you know, this kind of getting at the meaning of life, and then I quickly tried to start making my comics have something meaningful to say. So Charles Schulz is a huge influence. Jules Pfeiffer, once I got to be a teenager and started to get into political cartoons, I liked the way he has monologues, and it just, the characters seem so introspective. And then in college, I took a class in comics, and I discovered the Hernandez brothers, and they do this alternative comic book called Love and Rockets. And what I liked about that was, for the first time, I read it. It was a comic book, but it just seemed to be about real life versus superheroes, and I was very intrigued by that. I just put it in the back of my brain, and eventually I started drawing comics more in that vein. Well, today we're just going to do one page.
Okay.
So, but you don't feel like you have to tell the whole story in one page, because that'd be a short graphic novel.
Yeah.
So just think of it, can be just the beginning of a scene. Currently, by day, I'm a copywriter and a copy editor for a university in South Carolina, and I also help out with the alumni magazine. My training was in journalism, and partly it's that because originally I wanted to be a political cartoonist. And my father always thought maybe a good way to kind of get the political cartooning job, was to be a writer first. And his strategy was pretty good. So before I got into comics, I was a political cartoonist and a reporter. But the reporter lifestyle just wasn't for me. So I got into editing, and then I used my journalism. I did more copywriting. But then the writing helped once I got into writing longer stories. So I'm in the midst of working on a graphic novel. And the writing just really came in handy more in a creative fashion. Say for this is something I painted, sketched. I want a kind of little overhead view so I can kind of set the scene. Okay, you know, what's in this character's name, Cecil? What's in his room? Okay, he has the shoes off. You can add details. His book bag's over here, globes over here. So very good point. Different points of view. And when you're doing, you do it for variety, as far as whether it's a close-up or to show emotion. If you could you want to show emotion, you might want to have close-up. You can do intense close-ups. Right now, I teach mainly kids. I'm a kind of a kid cartoonist, and my graphic novel will be for kids. I've worked as a teacher in the past. I've worked as an after-school teacher in the past also. I find I really relate to kind of that 7 to 12 age group in particular. And I find they're very passionate about cartooning, and they kind of remind me of how I was. I totally relate to them, being into cartooning so much. So most comic book pages, as you see, they're kind of rectangular, okay? But within this rectangle, you can do all kinds of things to design your page. So a thumbnail is just a small sketch that helps you figure out visually what's going to happen so that a reader can follow their way through your story. In this class, basically what I tried to do is walk them through how they would create their own graphic novel. So we started with the story, and I was sharing what makes up a story, character wanting something, but yet there's these obstacles that keep them from getting what they want. Then we talked about making thumbnail sketches of certain scenes that will make up their graphic novel. And the little sketches, the thumbnail sketches, helps them to make decisions and make changes without committing so much effort into drawing full pages. So we did that, thumbnails. Then we talked about lettering, how to create legible letters so that it can be reduced and still be legible. Then we talked about drawing, sketching out this scene that they've already, that they did the thumbnail of. And then we ended this workshop with inking the letters using a brush, a pen, or a dip pen, or a felt tip pen. I do old school because kind of that's what the technology was when I was really getting into it, and those are the tools I'm most comfortable with. Of course, a lot of people are doing just beautiful digital art and not using pencils at all. The most technical stuff I do is kind of scanning my things in and doing a few things in Photoshop. But what's nice about the internet is that it's a good way to distribute, your comics. If you're not doing a traditional publisher. My first graphic novel project I kind of serialized online. So that's a whole new world, is just web comics. Whether from creating comics using the computer or using them to distribute, old school methods, the computer and the internet is a very powerful tool. Yes, I am co-organizing with the Million Year Comic Book Shop in Harvard Square, a comics festival that's especially designed to promote comics, hybrid books, and graphic novels for kids. A lot of times, like at, say, Comic Cons, sometimes it's for older audiences. Sometimes some of the violence is really gruesome, or just other inappropriate things that are for kids. So it's good. I wanted to provide a resource for both, kids, families, teachers, librarians, to see, what's all that's out there for, kids that are from early readers to age 12. So yes, the Boston Kids Comics Fest, just spelled out .wordpress.com, or just do a Google search for Boston Kids Comic Fest to learn more.